Welcome to another episode of Coda Conversations. Today we have David Milone. I hope I pronounced your name right.
You pronounced it the actual correct way. Most people just say Milone.
And he's a studio manager, composer, and much more. So, if you can give the audience a little bit about your background.
Sure. And thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I grew up in New Jersey. I'm 53 years old. When I was 12 or 13, I started to watch MTV and was like, "Oh, those guys look cool playing guitar." And
Yeah.
I mean, I thought the guys at that time looked cool, the hair metal stuff. Right now, I'm kind of like, eh. Anyway,
Yeah, I don't know now.
yeah. But I didn't know much then. I wasn't exposed to too much. So I get into high school and you meet guys who have similar interests and you form a band, and you practice throughout high school, and and then I was taking it very seriously and I wanted to do it. So by the end of high school, I started some band, which is actually still active today. They're called Ours, Ours. And we played together for years and years. And then I left the band around 93. I hope I'm not going on too long, but I do have a story. I left the band around 93. I joined a friend's band. My musical interest, expanded. I got more into the indie music and all sorts of music. And I formed a different band. I got a deal with Sony as a writer. We a couple of managers who took on the band made that happen, and we were thinking, okay, next thing is the record deal, and
right.
The band I was in previously, called Ours, for years, the singer kept going with it, and he ended up getting a huge deal with DreamWorks. There was a bidding war over him, and
That's crazy.
like Rick Rubin courting him, all the big names of the heads. He ended up signing with Michael Goldstone from who signed Pearl Jam and Rage Against the Machine to DreamWorks.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So while I was still being active with the band, got the writing deal with Sony. I was like, oh, this was 1997 when my associate, my friend, got the big deal, and I was like, oh shit. Can you curse on here? I won't say anything too bad.
You try to avoid it, but
okay, I'm sorry. Oh shoot. This guy this guy's getting out there and he's gonna do it, and we worked on it together, and my ego got to me, I think. And I joined the band again, but as a hired gun, and I immediately I left that other band I was with. That's my only regret in life. I'm friends with them now, but it was a little bit of a hard time. Yeah. Went on the road for the first time, 9 months straight, bus, had a video on MTV2, saw the crowds getting a little bigger. Long story short, did that for 2 years, and the same reason I couldn't really work with the fella who leads the band back in the past. I couldn't do it anymore again. Stopped, worked for my dad and my uncle for a year. A guy from a band called Radio 4, who was living in Brooklyn, who I knew, said they fired their guitar player and needed another guitar player. I took the job, and my first show was in Amsterdam, and that was interesting.
Wow. So are you primarily a guitarist, or what's like?
So, you would call me a guitar player. I was a guitar player. I was the lead guitar player in these bands, but I'm not a shredder. When I was growing up, and all these kids, especially in the hair metal scene, were shredding and doing all the hammer-ons and whatnot, I tried, and I got okay at it. And then something hit me at one point. I read something in a magazine where Springsteen said, I'd rather know how to write a good song. And I was like, yeah.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. I mean, how many times? Oh, great, that guy can shred. Oh, there's that blues lick again, or that classical lick. It's so fast. That's how I looked at it, at least.
I
wanted
for
to write songs.
Yeah, for sure.
So, wait, what was the question again? I forgot why I answered.
Right, are you primarily a singer?
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, so but because I started as a guitar player and a background singer, I still somehow was the lead player. but I adapted in a way of like, think of like the Edge from U2. I did simple melodic, what I thought were more like simple hooky things, and tried to be innovative and do something a little different. So the less is more approach, or like even David Bowie's guitar player Mick Ronson, I admired him, or even the guitar player of Adam and the Ants had a guitar player, Marco Argiro. Now I'm forgetting his name. I think that's his name. And that's the first guy whose licks I tried to cop. So I learned how to be that more simple, like bring in the melodic hooky line or, weird thing or whatever. Yeah. So that's what I was primarily. Yeah. And then I stayed with that band Radio 4 for a while, and I got to see much of Europe and China, and that band took me more around the world. The previous band I only traveled the States with, so now I had that experience. And
great opportunity.
Well, my dad put it like this when I first started touring. He's like, I did the math, and you're making 12 cents an hour.
and it's about right.
And he said, but I guess you're getting an education, and he definitely was correct in that sense. So that band goes on for a couple of years, and it started to slow down. The singer wanted to have children with his wife, and blah 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 blah. And I put out one record with them that I co-wrote, and we recorded that, and Pitchfork like killed it right away. And back in those days, if Pitchfork gave you if Pitchfork gave you the Pitchfork, you were done. Like, it was like, really? You just spent like
that was it.
Yeah. So we were winding down, and then we took none of us could drive for various reasons, and we had a show in Philly, and we hired this like 21-year-old kid and drove down in a van. We were all coming home at night or on the turnpike. There's no lights on the turnpike, and the kid falls asleep, and we flip completely onto the top of the van.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. I broke a couple ribs in my shoulder. My guitars flew out the window. Thank God the drummer knew how to pack a van like Tetris, or it would have been worse. And
right.
And I think that was the day we were all like, okay, I don't think we're going to do this anymore. All right, I'll see you guys hopefully, in a couple of years at a party or something. And I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I was like, I need money. So a friend told me go to this place, the Lucky Cat on Grand Street in Williamsburg, and I got a job as a bartender. Which was just pouring shots in beer cans at this place. But that was my start as a bartender, and it was an interesting place because all different people from different bands would come in, and it'd be like one bartender's working, then he goes on tour, another guy comes back. It was like a conveyor belt of taking shifts.
Oh wow! Now this is Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Yeah, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Very
cool area. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little extra cool now. Back then it was like a big dorm room, but a little less. Like there weren't the big high rises and stuff that there are now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really developed now, huh?
Yeah, it's nuts. And the woman who owned but that bar was interesting too, because like people from Arcade Fire and from the band that did Amy Winehouse's breakout big record, they all worked there. The Dap Kings, like all different people like that were in bands that were doing stuff. So it was really neat. So it was neat to make friends with these people, make connections that I still have today. But the woman who owned the bar, Lila, also worked for a music house, and I gave her a CD of music I wrote and recorded with my friend Jimmy, who's the way better engineer than I am. I would track and stuff, but he would do the mixing. Yeah, he's so he would record me all the time, and so I gave Lila the CD. She played it in front of her boss, and that's when I started getting into jingles. He's like, I want to take some chances. And in that first couple of years, like one of the first things we landed out of nowhere was we were excited. I was like, I'm set. I'm going to be doing this forever. Was a Sharpie commercial with David Beckham. And it was like, wow, this is good money. This is high profile. And we got a couple more. We got the first Microsoft Bing ad, and that would have been really, really good. And that was good upfront money. But they were like, we don't like this commercial. And they canceled it in 6 days. But and then little Pizza Hut things and this and that. And I would do this for years, but I wasn't part of a music house. I was a freelancer. My partner and I were freelancers. So you know, we would just keep trying and everything. And I was like, oh,
so
wow,
you're like hired on as like a session guy?
yeah, like after a while, a couple more music houses got wind of us, and you get an email that says like, hey, we have a job for this. Here's the references, and they give you like 5 bands, you know, and the script or maybe lyrics they want, you know.
Right.
And then you do your demo. They give you a couple bucks, and then if you're in the running, you go back and forth making revisions. Yeah, that's that world.
Fun. That sounds fun.
Yeah, and then you know, to sum it up, so I did that for a while, and then I was like, this is inconsistent for me. I need more money. And but we had built up a big library from all the failures, and it's funny, over the years, we've been able to sell from the library, you know. So it's wild, like that's not awesome. A failure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Then I started working for this guy who had a wedding company, and I would edit his edit his promo videos for his bands. I did that for a few years, and then he's like, let's make a studio. And I was like, okay. And then he's like, I want you to be studio manager. I'm like, okay. And then he sold the wedding business. He sold the wedding business, and then we just became the studio Alpha Wave, where what we do is mostly promo videos for bands, mostly live. Like they come in to the stage and they play live, and we record it. And I'll do a few takes with a couple different cameras, and like then edit it and pick. You know, if they did like 3 takes, say. Usually the last take's better because they're warmed up, and we'll use that audio.
Yeah,
but
right.
And you know, and even if a drummer doesn't play to a click or something, like they're usually consistent enough where when I'm using the other takes, I can slide things over and make it work. So
sure.
And then we also hold events. Believe it or not, we do parties and stuff like that too, because the place is like a nightclub when the lights are on and everything. So we're like, all right, this is another way to make money, and those are the 2 ways that the studio primarily makes money at the moment, and that leads me to where I am. That leads me to where I am right now. And aside from that, I keep the itch off of the music thing by I perform every couple months with this troupe in the city that's been around for 30 years, and I sing a song in 2 sets a night, and then I record my own music all the time as well. And then every once in a while, someone will call me and say, "Hey, you want to sing on this jingle thing?" Which I got one a month ago out of nowhere for. Wrestling, I forget what, like WW whatever it is right now, but it was it's this thing called you could look it up. It's called Chair Phone, and it's like a comedic thing they played only on the wrestling channel. But it's about a chair that has you know, all the things that you have on your phone. You could text, you could this, that. But it's wrestlers. Wrestlers are hitting each other with the chair and stuff. So I had to do this like heavy metal voice, and I got it somehow.
That's great.
And that's where I am. That's where I am. So I'll shut up now, and you could talk.
Sure. So do you actually prefer like managing the studio, or would you rather, like, you know, if it was a perfect world, go back to performing?
Yeah, it goes 2 ways. Lately I got the itch again. I'm like, you know what? I have a bunch of my own songs, and I think I'm gonna go out and play them. But as far as touring or traveling, there would have to be like, I would have to know I was making money to do something like that. But I do love traveling. Yeah. I enjoy the managerial part of the studio. Mostly, we've kind of changed structure in a way where mostly I don't have to be so hands-on about the organizational stuff and everything. I've been left to be able to just do creative stuff, which is great. And then when I do make the videos, I'm the director of them, and I feel like that's where I'm doing more of my managerial stuff when we're making those videos, because I've learned over the years how to keep a band happy while they're doing something,
right?
And how to keep it flowing.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge.
And how to keep it flowing, you know, within the time period that they have, so that, you know, they make it on time and on the, you know, what we're scheduled to do if there's 4 hours. Just to keep it all going. Yeah. And all the bands, by the time they're at the end, they think they're going to be like, we're going to do 20 songs or 20 pieces of songs. And it's like, that never happens, rarely happens. And it's biting off more than they could chew. But, you know, so they'll always get cranky when they're going for it at the end. And I just try and keep it all jokey and stuff. And
yeah. So let me ask this: in terms of your video editing chops, your video editing skills, where have you kind of like honed that? Where have you figured out, oh, I should do things like X or whatever?
Oh, well, so just like with music, I'm one of those people who doesn't want to sit down with a teacher, so I taught myself.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I had a feeling.
I had a guitar teacher for a year. I learned the open chords. I stopped for a year, and then I taught myself. And it's just like I didn't play cover songs right away when I started playing.
Yeah.
I immediately started writing pretty much.
Oh wow, that's unique.
Yeah, I mean, I've read about others who do that, and I was like, is this a narcissistic quality? Like, why aren't I? It's like, but yeah. So I forgot the beginning of the question again.
Oh no, just saying like with the video editing.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
How did you kind of like hone your skills? Like, what was your main way of getting better at that? That kind of stuff. Yeah.
So I always had an interest in film too, but when I was a kid, an editing machine costs like $30,000. But my father's acoustic guitar was in the closet, so you didn't have software back then.
Yeah, so, right.
I went to music, but I loved making films within the VHS camera with the big pack and like cut as you went along, horror movies and karate movies. So I always wanted to do that. Shoot to like when I lived in Brooklyn, say around 2014, I guess. Someone gave me Final Cut 7, and I just sat there little by little. I remember it took me like 2 weeks to make a video I could make in like 2 hours right now, but just not knowing how to reverse moves I made and stuff, and like just trial and error over the years, and then
trial and error, yeah.
And then I would just keep doing it for fun, but then I needed a job, and I started working for the guy who owns Alpha Wave, Dave Silver, and I wasn't an expert then, but he needed an in-house guy, so that it worked for both of us. And I did that for a long time with him, 3 years, and then I stopped for like a year or two, and he kept calling me, "You got to come see the new studio. You got to come see the new studio." And then one day I was like, "All right, I'm gonna go, and I need more work again." And I call him, and he goes, "Oh, perfect timing. Someone's gonna come and teach me Final Cut X, 10.
Yeah, right.
And so he's like, "You could take the lesson instead." I'm like, or the 2-day lesson. I'm like, okay. And that's when I went back to working with him and a guy named Rob Adams, who does like unbelievable wedding films. Taught me the important basics on the first day of how to work Final Cut 10. And then just like, that's like 9 years ago. And that's when I really started.
You kind of took that and ran with it.
And I ran with it. And I got particularly good mostly at doing the band stuff, like, because I'm a musician, so I'm cutting to the beat. Sometimes I get a little too frenetic, but
yeah, right.
I came down with a system for that, about how to do it quickly and in a good way. So
yeah, can you explain to us a little bit about that system?
Yeah, I can tell you how I did it. Okay, so when Dave Silver, the owner of Alpha Wave, got a new studio, not the one we're in now, it was his second studio. He built a stage because he used to take his wedding bands into the city to SIR, like the sound stage, where he could do showcases for brides and grooms to be and their parents. He would, put out invitations, and like every 2 months or so, a group of people would come looking to see if they liked the wedding band. So when he opened his second studio, he built his own stage, so he didn't have to go to the city. So then he would have this guy, Rob, who taught me how to shoot, and a couple other guys sometimes come in and shoot his bands. And I would watch them with the Steadicam, and, I always was good at framing shots with the camera. Since I was a kid, I just knew how to, and I watched enough TV. And,
right.
And so after some time, we had these 2 crappy Panasonics. We still have them. We use them for live streaming on open mic night. We keep them connected to the wall. He's like, "Why don't we do the videos? Why don't you do it? You could do it." So I would just hold the Panasonic, lightest, crappiest camcorder, man, and like do more like, more like that handheld crazy shooting stuff. And it was pretty good. Like, I thought it was kind of great at the time, but then
I like The Shining, the way that was filmed.
kind of, or almost more like The Office, where it's shaky, it's handheld, you know, same thing. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I didn't have a steady cam. I didn't know how to use one yet or anything like that. But so we started doing that. And then let's say after my first couple of videos, I'm looking at getting the edit up, and I'm looking and I'm going, oh, wow, that color is awful. Like, I knew nothing about using wash lights to cancel out the colors and light up the skin of the performers and stuff like that. So with every mistake, I was like, oh. So I learned how to color correct more, because I'd be like, this person's face is completely red and it looks awful.
Yeah. Right.
So that brought me into the tools where I had to learn how to mess with the colors. And then I'd be like, oh, this is too dark. And then I learned how to mess with the exposure and stuff. So that taught me how to. And then eventually we got more pro cameras, like Canon 5Ds, and I started just shooting them on auto. And then I was just like, how come the lights look different if I'm on this side of the room? The cameras aren't matching. And then I realized on auto, like when you turn the camera and stuff, it might change like how it's seeing the lights. So that's when I learned how to set on the camera the proper settings, from the ISO to the aperture and all that, the white balance and the way that I want, color, temperature. So
sounds complex.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of a dummy, because someone like me could have learned where I am right now 5-6 years ago, but I like to take things at my pace, and that's just the type of human I am, I guess.
Well, there's something to be said for taking in stuff slowly and working it out, your own way.
Yeah, that's the way I'd like to do it. And then regarding the system, otherwise, that I sort of came up with as far as shooting these promo videos, and is that all right, so let's say a band's like, we're going to do 9 songs. And I'll be like, okay, 9's reasonable. They have a 5-hour package. Usually the first hour is for setting up, getting the sound in the control room, and making them happy on stage, the performers, with what they're hearing up there. And then we start shooting. And so say, like, again, it's 9 songs. So I might say something like, okay, it's 9 songs. So I'll have 2 Canons with me. I'll have one on a steady cam, and I'll have one on a tripod. I'll set the one up on a tripod, getting a certain shot, and then I'll have my steady cam doing another shot. And I'll work it out where then say I do 3 takes of each song. Then on the second take, I'll move that tripod camera somewhere else, and I'll do something else with the steady cam. On another take, sometimes we have a drone that the other Dave runs, and I'll just do a wide shot steady, just so I have the whole stage, and he'll go up with the drone so I won't get in his way. And then I'll maybe be to the side with the steady cam, just getting something I haven't gotten, but not getting in the way of the wide shot, or the other.
Now, what kind of drone are we talking?
Nothing fancy, but it looks great. It's for what we do. It's matching the stuff. It's like a DJI 3 something, like it's a small one. It's so brittle, but it shoots 4K.
Yeah.
It's matching the cams well enough.
So that's probably giving you more depth and more layer in terms of like the room, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like having a jib that could do more, actually.
Right.
In a way, because we used to hire this guy, or a couple people who have jibs, and in our place they could go about 12 feet or something like that, and it would look great. We're like, oh, this is so cool. To the point where at one point, I don't know if you ever heard of an Edelkrone. It's like this little tiny electronic jib that you can control from your phone, which is like $5,000 or something like that. We bought one of those, and it glitches so much it just sits in a corner now. But yeah, it's awful. And so, the drone works in that way, because not only can it do like shots like a crane, like a jib, but it can like just be medium and just come straight in on the person, or like get above the drummer on the stage, so you could do a shot like completely. All
just
these little
like a lot more like wider range of perspectives with the drone. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, because even as I grow with my shooting, I'm like, all right, I'm getting bored of what I do. We need more. So every time we find a way to change things a little bit, I'm excited.
Well,
and
and then that's,
yeah,
you know, that's to speak to the creative process of music. Like, you know, you're a composer, so I'm
yep.
sure you kind of have your own way of doing composition. Like for me, I compose video game music and I write it all on hardware. I use something called the Korg EMX1 Electribe. Have you
Hmm.
ever heard of this device?
I have not.
Okay, so it's for the well for the audience. It's a groove box. A groove box is basically a drum machine, a synthesizer, and a sequencer all in one. So I
Oh,
write everything on. So like I make loops, and then I put the loops into song mode. And then once I have, you know, okay, so you have like pattern A that goes 8 times, then pattern B that goes 2 times. Like you structure it all like that, and then once I'm done with the structure of the song, I'll go back and hit record and do live, you know, live changes, live overdubs, and that's kind of my process. But I was wondering what your process is like.
I'll tell you, and I do know about the Groove Box. We had it. My friend, who's the engineer that I did the jingles with, I was also in a band with him. The band I was in when I got the Sony deal, and he
Right.
used to. He's a big gadget head, so back then he had the whatever the Groove Box was at the time, and it was amazing. Like we used it live. We would sync up with it. The drummer would play to a click to things that were happening in that as we played with two hard
Right.
guitars. It was
Right.
super cool. So I am familiar with it now that you explained what it was that you were speaking of.
Yeah, no, and it's like for me, it's its own universe. It's like, you know, you get your headphones on, you plug in the device, it's got tubes, so there's like a warmth to the machine.
Oh wow.
And then you just like you get in there and then you totally forget about everything else except for the groove box because you're just totally locked into these loops and synthesizer lines and bass lines and
So
like
cool.
yeah, it's just like a completely immersive situation because, like, I used to write in FL Studio, Fruity Loops, but to me, there's some kind of disconnect when I'm writing on a computer. It's not the same thing as when I'm writing on like a Groove Box. Like with the Groove
Hmm.
Box, I'm able to get my ideas out faster and more accurate to my vision.
Why do you think that is? Just because of the accessibility to each move, so to speak.
I think a lot of it has to do. Well, this goes back to like '90s video game music. It's interesting because of the limitations that the composers had. So I feel like because the device is limiting in certain ways, it forces me to be more creative,
Ah.
and then thus in turn, you know, I get better quality takes or better mixes or whatever, and it's just a totally different experience from mixing on a computer. It's
Hmm.
really different, and I enjoy it a lot.
Cool. I can understand that.
So
So go ahead. Sorry.
oh, okay. Yeah, no, just taking it back to the filming. So like before you start filming, do you come up with a game plan or like a script of what you're gonna do, or do you just kind of wing it?
Well, to mostly I sort of wing it. Like I have my system, like I said about like the takes and stuff like that. Um, but unless a client, and we have a production meeting with the client first to ask them if they want anything specific, and then we will plan things, certain shots if they want something that, in particular, if they're going to use the big LED wall and two screens, and if they have a color scheme of the lights that they want for each song, or things to flicker when certain things happen, which the lighting guy, obviously handles. I can't do all of it. And
Right.
things like that. It's but otherwise I just kind of dance with the steady cam. Like I even if I don't know the song, I know like, okay, the chorus is coming up. Okay, the bridge is coming up. And then
Sure. Yeah.
Also by the second and third take, I saw something particular, like, oh, that guy's doing a solo, this guy's doing that, I got to get over and get that, that kind of stuff. So I adapt as I go along. I've always been pretty good in that way.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you think pretty fast on your feet.
Yeah, I've had a lot of energy my whole life in that way. Yeah.
That's great.
But just to sum up like that whole video thing, then I have all my takes. Let's say I used 2 cameras and it was 3 takes. That means for that one of the songs, that means I have so what do I have? 3 takes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's that? Six cameras that I can put on a timeline. Did I do the right math? I'm not even sure. But I take all the takes from the 2 cameras, the 3 takes from the 2 cameras, and I take the audio of the take that they did musically on stage and went to the control room. I'll take that. Let's say it's the 3rd take. I'll take that and I'll lay it on the top. I'll lay it down on the timeline, right. and then I'll just start. I could see. I used to do it by ear. Now I actually look at the frequency, but I used to do it by ear, which is crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll take each take, and you could see the audio frequency stuff in each video take, and I'll just line it up at the beginning. You see when the drummer always usually hits this first stick, clicks it off. So I'll see where that first click is, and I'll line them all up, and then they're all lined up on top of each other, because I don't like that multi-cam editing where you could see all the cameras and you're just clicking with your mouse and going from one to one. There's no like rhythm to that.
Yeah, that seems kind of sporadic.
Yeah. And some people think it's crazy. Oh, I have all these layers. That must take you forever. A full song usually takes me an hour to get through, because I learned how to fly in that way. And I learned how to like see what all the layers are, like, as I'm going along. Also, I know what I shot. So I'm just kind of like, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants and like thinking of the rhythm of the song. If it's a slow song, there's probably going to be more cross dissolves and stuff like that. But when it's a frenetic song, I'm kind of like banging to the beat. If something's going like that, Dan, Eye of the Tiger. Like I might like cut like that, like bam, 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 if there's a song that has something rhythmically as obvious as that, maybe I would do something like that. But then also when I'm watching the edit and I'm seeing my top camera, and I always put my steady cam, my main camera, on the last take at the top. If I have a shot that's going on for 10 seconds or more, and where others might be like, oh, that's a little long and that's boring. If it looks like, a Scorsese opening shot, like going into the bar in Goodfellas, where it's just one long take, but it looks so good.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there. There's no reason to cut around, if it looks good. But then
that reminds me of, I forget what they call that style of filming, but Woody Allen, Hannah and Her Sisters.
Yeah.
Not like it's like continuously shot. I forget what they call that. But
I don't know.
Are you doing stuff like that or not really?
I feel like I attempt to do that with shots in a video, but I can only do it for so long. It's a band, so
sure.
But I'll do I'll start in the back of the room and I'll just keep coming up closely in that sort of way, little by little, until it comes up to the singer, and then raise up, the steady cam to the face, and or pull back in that way. Things that, little things that I'm doing because I'm referencing, those kind of shots.
Right. So you're kind of like freestyling as you go.
Yeah. No, but I've made a few more, concept videos, storylines, where it's like to a recorded track and it's not on the stage. It's like, story stuff. And that I'll plan out more. And then also as things come up, as I'm doing stuff, if there's an idea, I'll be like, oh, we should get this too and do this. But, when it's more of a story thing and not the live act stuff, then I haven't really full on storyboarded, but I know what I want, and I kind of put it down in a basic way. But now I have a friend who's been working on that stuff with me, and he's really into the storyboarding and such. So he's been getting more on that, and I like his ideas. So we're learning. Yeah, we're learning from each other.
So let me ask you, in terms to switch gears a little bit, in terms of composing, what is your process normally, and what is your favorite composition that you've worked on?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I mean, about favorite composition part, I don't know what to say about that yet, but we can save that one for the end. So I started as a kid on my father had a Martin guitar that he bought before I was born from a guy who was desperate for money in the Bronx, but it's a great, cool old Martin. And I started taking it out of his closet, and I would take it down to my room and just sit on my bed and try to write, strumming. And that's how I always wrote up until like, let's see, like until I was like 41, I'm gonna say like 41, somewhere between 41 and 43. And then what happened was, so I was doing the jingles with my friend Jimmy, who was more of the engineer. And at that point, even though I knew how to work on Pro Tools a little bit, I would do my tracking when I lived in Brooklyn and send him my crappy track, and he would do mix it for me. He was still learning to how to be as good as he is now. So I by the time I was like 41 or 43, he said to me, well, a little before that, he said to me, you need to pick up some of the slack at the recording, and you have it too easy. You write and you come in and you play your parts, and then I have to sit here and do revisions for weeks and stuff. And he's like, I need help with the recording. And he's like, also, he's also like, and then you don't have to come over and you could work remotely from home and send me the stems. I'm like, what's a stem? So
So for our listeners, can you describe what a stem is?
I mean, to me, it's just the individual tracks. That's how I always would have said it. Like, give me the separate tracks of your song, and then stem is the technical term, I suppose, these days. I mean, I'm on Logic 11, and it has a stem splitter that I tried the other day, which was pretty amazing.
Interesting. Now, do you prefer Logic or Pro Tools?
So that's what I was getting at. Like, when he said that to me, I was like intimidated to try and catch up to him on Pro Tools, and I'm like, I'm gonna do Logic. And also because someone had told me like, oh, the MIDI's much better, and not that I knew much about MIDI at the time, but so I started learning Logic, and which is still what I work on now. And what happened was I started to learn. I try to innovate. So and
Logic is a little more intuitive than Pro Tools, no?
I think so, but I haven't been on Pro Tools in forever. I mean, I think Logic is pretty simple to figure out. There's so many incredible features right now. It's amazing. So I when I play acoustic guitar and I sing and I strum, and I write, I'm kind of limited because my rhythm in my mind can only follow what my hands are doing. It's just like how I can't separate my hands to play like piano, doing one thing on the left hand, or even on drums. I could keep a good beat on drums, but I can't like separate my hands. They have to all be kind of doing like from the same source. I never learned how to do that.
So you're not really a drummer then?
No, and I'm not really a piano player, but I can make it sound like I play piano on MIDI.
Yeah, MIDI. Yeah, right.
So I started to get interested in I'm so bored with just writing music with the guitar, and so I would start laying tracks down of just music, and then so I could be free and hold a microphone, and then scat different rhythms I probably wouldn't have if I was holding an instrument in my hand, and it started to open up different paths for me in terms of writing, I suppose. A lot. And that led to learning how to work the MIDI. I basically would do, I can't play piano but I can hear the notes by ear. So I'll play the G on my guitar and I'll be like, oh, that's a G. And I'll find it all right, that's the G note. And then I'll find the other two notes, and I'll do what, and I'll hit record. And I'll hit that one chord. And then I'll hit record again, and I'll do the next chord. And then once I have my section, I'll join them, quantize them, and cut.
Quantize, chop it all up, just grid everything out.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried some wacky stuff. Once I just put the MIDI board in front of me and had the song on, and just started hitting the keys to the rhythm of the song, hit quantize, and then moved all the notes into a place where they made sense. And it sounded like I was playing classical piano, this crazy thing. That was a fun little experiment.
That's awesome. So do you prefer to write on the computer in Logic, or do you like to use hardware?
You mean hardware in the sense of holding a guitar?
More like hardware, like a groove box.
So no, definitely, because I don't really work with the anything else outside of a guitar and an amp and Logic and my interface and my vocal preamp. That's it. and my
Okay.
MIDI board. Yeah, I mean, I used to never even like pedals when I was a kid. I was just like, you got to go into a tube amp and just be rock and roll. But now I started collecting. Now I started collecting more pedals again. And an EBO I just bought the other day. It's like my 30th one. I always lose them. Do you know what an EBO is?
Oh wow, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I used it on a tune I was recording today actually, and it's been a long time, and it was fun. Yeah, so I prefer. But I switch it up. Like I do like going right to the computer. Sometimes I have no idea in my head, and I'll just put a groove down, and I'll hit the first chord, and then I'll be like, in my head, what do I hear could be the next chord, and just move on like that. And then sometimes I still will sit in my guitar and strum, the chords in the same way I learned when I was a kid.
Pretty much you're working in layers. You're layering everything. Yeah.
Yes, I like to call it the Brian Eno style of like recording, because I think that's the way he does it. The producer of like Talking Heads and U2 and Bowie.
Right.
I feel like it's I saw his documentary the other day, and I was like, hey, that's how I do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, to swing it back around, like in terms of your composing, your composition career, what's like the most important or most inspirational piece that you've worked on so far?
Okay, so this one keeps coming to my mind, but it's funny. So since the 90s, throughout all these bands, I have this group of friends who we would get together in the same rehearsal studio that I was in with one of the bands. And two of the guys are these Jersey City guys. I grew up in Paramus, New Jersey, and these are these two Jersey City guys. Came from a little bit more of a rougher upbringing. And they were like, hey, if we split the cost of the rehearsal room with you, then can we hang out at night after you guys do your rehearsal and do whatever and record stuff. And by then, my friend Jimmy had his Mac and had Pro Tools in that room. It's 1990.
Oh, nice.
So we came up with this jokey band we call Ape Fight. Ape Fight. And we just would record ridiculous things, almost like early Beastie Boys, but more punk rock, not rap, and like saying crude bad things we're embarrassed of now. But we kept working on it for a while, and the bass player came in.
Was it more like Minor Threat, like
more like not pop punk in the sense that it's a pop song with hard guitars, but not Blink 182 talking about walking through the high school, getting the books and stuff like that.
Or Green Day. Yeah.
I mean, actually, okay. So this is what I'm getting at. More like Green Day, but with silly lyrics and sometimes harder, like rougher riffs, like dirty.
Yeah.
But that band, the drummer can't really play too well. The singer didn't know how to sing, and he's much better now, character singer at least. Over the years, we honed in on stuff, and the bass player came in and he's like, let's work really hard at making a record now. And we did that a couple of times, but the second one we made, a friend of ours named Bill Collage wrote the movie Accepted. It's like the breakout movie for Blake Lively, Jonah Hill, and Justin Long. And
I think
like it's
I've
about
seen that.
Like it's a college. Yeah, he makes up a
movie.
Yeah, it's always on like Comedy Central or whatever. Anyway, so we have a song recorded called "You Think We Suck." That's the name of the song, and and Bill is like, I think this song would be perfect for the movie, and we're like, what? And he's like, no, because I don't want to. So the chorus goes, you don't know S is SHIT. You don't know S like I know, and you're the S head. Don't ask. We were crazy kids then, but he said the fraternity in the movie is called S heads, and it just makes complete sense. So long story short, our song opens and closes the movie. Like when the movie starts, our song is on, and that's song amazing. Yeah, and it was like my jokey friend band. It's probably the biggest thing I was a part of in that regard, because probably more people saw that or heard that song than the bands that I was in on major labels that trying to be serious. And
right.
The only thing which is funny, a little side note, is that the first lyric goes, "You think we suck? Well, do you really think we give a F?" You know, it rhymes. So they were like, "Oh, we're only allowed one F-bomb in the movie, but you guys probably wouldn't want to change your song, right? I'm sorry." And we looked at the guy, we're like, "What do you think? We're the Doors?" We're like, "Of course we'll change the lyric." We're like, they gave us $40,000, like that we split up. It was like crazy. These two of the guys again have, you know, they've never been musicians really. The computer made them sound like that.
Right.
So that happened, and then we're actually, you know, I can't find it online. It's like they took our name off, but we're actually on the soundtrack next to Green Day, Chili Peppers, Citizen Cook, like all these people, and then it just says 8 Fight, and it's like, what?
Yeah, who the hell is this? Right.
Now here's my extra side story. A couple years later, Green Day put out a new record, and there's a riff I say on the record that is exactly like the riff we had on that other record. And I'm like, Green Day ripped us off. At least that's what I'm speculating. So, I mean, that was kind of a really proud achievement in a way that came out of nowhere. You know, otherwise,
yeah, it sounds really random. Sounds like it just kind of came up, out of the blue.
Super random. Otherwise, like, you know, besides like jingle stuff, Radio 4, the second band I was in, one of the songs on the record I was a part of, like, they played it all like sporting matches for a while because I had this riff in the beginning, this like delay thing, and it was, you know, very charging, I guess, and like people were saying I was getting checks from ASCAP saying that it was being played like around in that way.
Really?
Yeah,
and like football games.
Exactly. That's what I heard. I heard it was football, if I remember correctly.
That's like, what's that group? Blur, Song 2.
Oh yeah,
so
exactly.
Played at like NFL games and stuff.
Yeah, because it's a hard charger, you know.
Yeah.
Aside from that, like, I'm trying to think if anything else like that I wrote like got anywhere like in particular that I could think of besides like having some high profile jingle stuff and having songs on records. But you know, when I see my ASCAP checks quarterly, it's usually like $125 from the 8 Fight thing being in that movie. It's just consistent. Yeah, right. And like stuff from Radio 4 being played in Europe here and there. And then maybe something like out of nowhere, but like, oh, why is the check a little bigger? And it's like some jingle out of nowhere. Some company decided to rerun, you know?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But, you know, I love writing for myself, too. The jingle thing taught me a lot about my own writing. I always loved just writing in minor keys for some reason. And then I had to write in major for jingles because it's all happy usually and stuff. And
it's all happy, right?
Yeah. But that kind of taught me to accept that in my own writing and how to make that work for me. So, you know, so I have all my stuff up. I have a lot of my stuff up on, not a good amount of my stuff up on Spotify and Amazon, whatever, all the streaming services through just DistroKid, you know, because I'm like, well, I have all these songs that are mine and I don't go out and play them. I should put them out there. I don't do much promo or anything.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's always the tough thing, you know, marketing. It's like, you know, you could have the best product in the world, but if you don't know how to market it, you're dead in the water. Like, you look at Apple, you know, Steve Jobs, the marketer, coming in and really seeing the vision of, you know, the personal computer. And I mean, the rest is history. But the marketing, I feel like a lot of musicians really do not know anything about marketing. And so they get taken advantage of by managers, record labels, etc.
Absolutely. I experienced it.
Yeah. So what can you speak to that experience?
Oh, just that when you're younger and you're on the road, and even though everything seems to be getting paid for and you get your little per diem, like not coming home with any money, and, you know, just realize, more so, you know, even though you hear nightmare stories about the major record companies, the bands I was in never got big enough for us to be like, oh, we got ripped off 50% by the manager or this and that. Mostly I'm going to go to mostly I'm going to go to the jingle world in this sense. That especially because we were freelancers, I never really knew what the payoff was to the music house. And they'd be like, okay, the first payoff, the payoff is 2,000 to you. And then, you'll get your residuals on ASCAP, as on the writer side.
Sure.
Not the publishing side per se. So I knew like, I'm definitely getting screwed in ways here and there. Like, for instance, I'm not going to mention names, but a guy I was very friendly with started working for a company that had a connection to Nickelodeon. And we were trying out for a cartoon theme song. And we didn't get it, but we were trying out for it. And then they asked us they used the song we tried with in an episode though for a bit, and we got paid, and I saw my ASCAP money too, and that was that. Then they asked us to do it again, and then somebody said, my partner said like, oh well, blah blah said there's no money in it this time, and I was like, well wait, what do you mean there's no money in it?
Right.
Like, it's Nickelodeon, someone got paid,
Someone's getting paid.
Yeah. Oh, I'll tell you a little reason why I couldn't speak up much either. For years, because I don't mind saying this either, for years, because I was on the Sony deal, none of these music houses or separate little mom and pop music houses wanted to work with me knowing I had a Sony deal, which also tells you, which is how, because they want to kind of screw you and not tell you what they're giving you. And if Sony was involved, they would, either put the kibosh on it or be like, you got to give him more money. So they don't want to deal with that. So I would, I put everything in my partner's name, and he would pay me. He's been one of my best friends since childhood, so I trusted him, and he's always done the right thing with me. So that's how we did it for years. And then finally, my Sony deal was a 12-year deal. And then I was like, oh, I guess I'll be out. So I thought I was out. And then I was like, why am I not out? Because it was like, I had no reason. It was a deal structured around a guy who was going to get a band with his, get a band deal with his band. So because the deal read, I needed to get out of it. I needed to make 2 records where 10 songs were 100% mine on the record for a major label. So I was like, oh, I'm screwed. But I at first started talking to the lawyer who set up the deal, and that kind of was getting nowhere. So I just went around and just went directly to this fella over at Sony ATV, and he let me out of it. He's just like, okay, no problem. I said, I'm like, this is now. I said this. I was honest. In the email, I was like, this is now like what's the word? It's with a D. Why can't I'm blanking on it? It makes people not want to work with me. that I'm signing. And long story short, he said, okay, I'll let you go. And if you want our help ever again, just reach out. So that was that. And I was out of that.
Wow.
Yeah. Cause I was just like, I'm kind of not happy about not having my name on this stuff, but I also didn't care for years because I was still in the rock band mentality of like, I don't even want people to know I do jingles.
Right. Yeah. So kind of doing it like undercover.
Yeah. So yeah.
Kevin, did you have any other questions?
Sure. So, yeah, it sounds like initially you started out with music. I believe that's your initial passion, and then you transitioned all the way over to video. Are you just as passionate about video as you are music?
I think so. I think so. And I always would have been. Again, I just didn't have the resources when I was younger, like you have a guitar. My dad did. I saw on this like city electronics place like an editing machine, but it was like crazy money. So I told my dad, he's like, yeah, obviously you're not getting that for Christmas. But he found these like 2 little boxes that hook up into 2 like old school VHS recorders, and it links them. And I was like, all right, this could be cool. He was cool enough to find that thing, but it looked like crap. Like even when it was cutting from like VHS tape to the other, like it still had that wave coming down the screen with each cut. Like I was like,
oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you, if they had Premiere or Final Cut when I was a kid, I'd have been a pig in you know what. Like, I would have been ecstatic back then. I would have been one of these kids making all sorts of social media things, videos and
Yeah, I
pages.
mean that's kind of how I feel, you know, being a musician. That's kind of how I feel with like I didn't grow up with YouTube. YouTube didn't exist until, you know, for a while. And so like it made me learn music in a different way. I had to visualize, you know, like Blur song 2, that iconic beat. You know, I had to visualize what is this guy actually doing, because I don't have the footage to go off of. I've just got to go off the audio. But because of that, I think it developed my playing in a more jazz mentality and a more improvisational technique and feeling. So I'm kind of grateful I didn't have YouTube growing up, because it's like the easy way out. Okay, I can pull up Blur song 2 live from Kansas City, you know, and I can see exactly what he's doing. And that takes all the guesswork out of the process, where, you know, you're sitting there, you're like 15 years old, you got the track playing on your CD player, and you're like, I wonder, does he do this? And then you try it, and you're like, no, it's not quite it. Let me try something else. And then like eventually you land on it. And when you do finally land on it, it's so, you just really appreciate it. And so I think that's something that maybe people are now missing growing up with YouTube.
Plus, the path to get you to where you were able to accomplish what you want, you learned stuff along that way. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. So, yeah. It's funny you say about YouTube, though, because I have a 13-year-old son, and I feel like it's 7 months ago, he got interested in guitar finally. And he's like really, really good, and it's all from YouTube. But he's like, you know, when I was a kid, it was like standard tuning on the guitar. I never put a capo on the guitar. I never changed my tuning. He's like into all these tunings. He knows these jazz chords where I'm like, how are you doing that with your finger? And
right.
It's all coming from YouTube. He's like, that's his teacher. It's wild.
Yeah, it's a whole different world now.
Yes, indeed.
Well, yeah, just final question from me. So like, are there any techniques that you take from like your favorite movie directors and apply them to your video? And if so, what techniques are those?
I mean, for me, it's just, well, angles, like the way shots are framed, and the kind of shots I like to get. I do like the close-ups with the really nice lenses that are made for close-ups, the 85s and the 100 millimeter, all that kind of stuff. And I'm very into darker look. Somebody said the lighting guy on The Godfather, they called the Prince of Darkness or something because of how dark like many of the scenes were. And I find that like
great movie.
And when I shoot like bands at the studio, I shoot them darker than when we have other guys come in. If we need a second guy, or if I can't be there on a night and some other guy does it, we'll call like a professional and like that we know. I always notice they all shoot brighter than me, and I'm like, I'm like, I'm not the standard, but you know what? It's about taste. It's just like with music, you know. It's like some people like things more lo-fi and the distorted vocal, and like some people like things really slick and huge radio sounding, you know, or some people like both. So yeah, it's mostly about angles when it comes to like the camera, like just the angle I'm shooting with and the lighting, obviously, and maybe an approach. Like, yeah, again, like, so that steady shot that Scorsese uses and everything, I was taught. I didn't go to film school, but I saw something on it where Citizen Kane by Orson Welles was supposedly the first time that shot was used. In the very beginning, it's coming through a courtyard and it's just going long. So that kind of stuff attracts me too, you know. But then, you know, innovating upon those things, like, all right, they're going this way, he's going around the bar, this guy's coming in straight. What else could you possibly do? You know, like, you know, just being creative.
You try to stay creative with the whole process, it sounds like.
Yeah, I try to be innovative as best I can. That's a word once I learned it, I never stopped using it and applying it So all things
So
creative.
you're using all the different tools that you have in your tool belt, and you're just trying to make the best product possible. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, there's something. A way I could put it is, I remember hearing this thing John Lennon said. He's like, I can't play a tuba, but if you put me in a room for an hour with a tuba, I'll come out and show you something.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, that's everything for me. Brian, did you have any closing questions?
Yeah, I always like to ask this to, anyone that comes on a show, whether it's like a big fish, a medium fish, a small fish, like, when you think back to when you were entry level coming up in music or coming up in film, like what advice would you give to your younger self? Or like what advice would you give to the green, the small fish that's trying to break into music? What kind of, what's like the number one tip you would give that person?
If you love it, keep on doing it. But be careful because it's harder out there. Like, especially if there's not like a rock band scene out there. If there's popular bands that are rock, they're either established already or they're big underground bands that have to continuously tour because they're not making money off of records. So
Right.
So if you love it, do it. But maybe think about also what my dad had told me and I didn't listen to, which is like, have a backup plan. Because
The famous line from our parents, have a backup plan. And I was always like, no, like you can't have a backup plan because then you're going to fail at what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll tell you what, though, my father, before he had passed, I had gotten the first big, the Sharpie Beckham job, and I was out to dinner with him. He's like, well, I got to admit, I've never seen someone hold on as long as you did and have such strength. And I had just gotten health insurance. He saw a light at the end of the tunnel. So, but if you love it, it could be like a person who just does theater and they do it professionally, but maybe they do something else. Like I kind of kick myself for not for putting all my eggs in one basket, just not, being like, because I know people who can, well, while they're doing this and they do it well, they have something else they do that might bring in finances, in another way that they're good at.
And that's a tough thing with music. And one of the film composers or music composers that we've had on recently mentioned, and I think this is very true, very telling of the industry, is that music is not linear. Music is not a straight line. Like you'll get opportunities and then you'll get nothing. And then you'll get a small opportunity and then nothing. And then you'll get a huge opportunity. Yeah, it's a hustle, basically. And so would you agree with that it's not linear music?
Absolutely. I mean, over that river I'm looking at, I have a ton of musician friends that I've made over the years in the city. And from now 40 years old to literally 70 years old, one of the guys who's probably the best rock singer in the city, it's guy Mike Fornatale. And it's a hustle for all of them. Like, it reminds me that I wish I had learned how to read music because at least these dudes who are hustling too, they get gigs for different acts and it pays because they can on the spot read. They have their tablets up. And
right. Sight reading is a pretty nice skill to have.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like, it's a way, just like you said, it goes like this. That's how it was with jingle stuff. A couple of months might go by and I'll be like, oh shoot, I'm not making enough money at the studio right now and falling behind on the bills here. And then suddenly a music thing will come through and I'll be like, oh, thank you, God. You helped me again.
Yeah, it just comes through. Like for me, it's definitely been sporadic. I kind of was similar to you, in high school, playing in like hardcore punk bands, pop rock, pop punk, metal, all that kind of stuff. Did a bit of touring. We did some US tours with one of the groups. And we even went to Europe and Central America eventually with one of the groups. But then at 22, I quit the band. The band I was doing all the touring, I quit because the singer wouldn't go all in. I was like, look, we're getting opportunities. We need to go all in right now. Like, are you with me? And he was like, nah, I want to keep my apartment. And I'm just like, no, this is the time you lean into things. Like, we're getting booked internationally. This is go time. And he just couldn't see I guess he couldn't see the vision like I saw it. So I said, well, the hell with this. So I quit that band. I was playing in another like pop rock, indie rock band. We moved out to LA. I was 22. And that project lasted about a year because we get out there and then it was just three of us, me on drums, guitarist, singer, and actually my sister was on keys. And then we found a bass player in LA. But it's just, it fell apart after a year because I was doing everything. I was doing all the booking. I was doing all the marketing, all the promotion. And at a certain point, you just get burnt out with like, why is no one else helping me with this? But that's always been,
because no one wants to do it.
That's the thing. That's always been my predicament. It's like I get involved with people that they don't want to do the work, and then after a while, you start resenting them because you're like, well, I'm trying to get us out there. Like, we're small fish in a huge pond of LA. And I was like, we have to take whatever gig we can get. And they're like, oh, I don't want to play at that dive bar. Oh, I don't want to play here. And I'm like, at a certain point, I said, well, the hell with it. I'm done booking. Like, you guys can do the booking. And then within like 2 or 3 months, that was it.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame to like have people who don't like understand why you play that dive bar and why you do it little by little and pick up some fans along the way. And then suddenly that's how everybody did it.
They think it's just, oh, okay, I moved to LA and now I'm a big fish all of a sudden. Like, I'm going to land all these gigs. Like, no, that's the moment you lean into hard work. And they just, they didn't see it the way I saw it. So it didn't end up working out. We're still on good terms, me and the singer. But I wish we had all like collaborated more on the booking and like gave it more of a fair shot. But I ended up doing session work after that, which was okay. But it's different being in a band with your friends touring around than it is playing, a live gig professionally as a session guy. You're just like a hired gun. Like, they don't really care about you. They're not even necessarily nice to you because they're just looking at it like, oh, we're not getting paid, but we're having to pay you.
Yeah. Funny business. Wait, so what's your primary instrument when you're doing session work?
Oh, drums. I'm a drummer.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Drums and hand percussion. But then I have on the side, I compose video game music on the Korg Electribe.
Yes. Hey, when you say hardcore, what kind of hardcore? How would you describe the hardcore?
More like Youth of Today, more like straight edge style, like
all right.
Minor
So then,
Threat.
I wonder if I was in a band with my friend Charles Maggio. He had a label called Gern Blanston, and he had a band called he was the singer of a band called Rorschach, which was influenced by all those bands and is a part of the hardcore history. I thought you might have heard of him, but maybe not.
But it was, I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and growing up in Connecticut, like, hardcore pretty much came out of the Northeast, so, I guess West Coast too with Bad Brains. But a lot of stuff, came out of New York, Connecticut, the early hardcore bands. So it's an interesting place to grow up and being in hardcore bands and like having that rich history,
Well, when I was like in 1992 is when I started hanging out on the Lower East Side of New York, and because that's where all the bands were, and it was a mix of all the hardcore guys, the hipster indie guys, like everybody was in that area. So I knew a lot of the people from the early CB days.
Is that like CBGB scene?
Yeah, CBGBs, exactly. There used to be hardcore Sundays. All my friends would come in from Jersey. It was like there was a big skinhead thing, and then it became like straight edge skinheads versus the Nazi skinheads, and just all developed and changed. Yeah, where big some mess. And it's interesting where half the hardcore guys of that era that are my age and older, half of them went, let's just say, politically in one direction, the other in another direction. Like some of them took on more of the tough guy thing, and then other ones remained still tough by nature, but a different mentality, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I get you.
So yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's all the questions I have. Did you have anything else, Kevin?
No, I think that's it from me. Did you have any closing thoughts you want to leave with our audience?
Not that I could think of, but can I like do a plug, I guess, since I never do promo?
Oh yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. We're here to network. Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram at Milone Music. It's MiloneMusic, Milone Music, and my name is David Milone. And if you look me up on like Spotify and stuff, or wherever you Apple Music, stuff should come up. I think I paid my bill. The DistroKid.
Right.
But I would say that's about it.
Cool, man. Well, it was great having you on tonight.
I appreciate it. It was great being here. That was a great conversation. Unexpected a month ago when you asked me.
Yeah, like I said, networking. That's the name of the game. Just trying to get this podcast out there as much as I can, and heavily leaning into LinkedIn for the networking.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely appreciate you having you on, man. You'll have to stop by again sometime.
I would love it. I have more stories. I thought of a couple, and I'm like, I think we're out of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for coming on, and I hope you have a good night.